Stress is a biological and psychological response to difficult situations, time periods that we find challenging, unexpected, difficult for us to cope with. At those times, we start to feel stressed. Now, but from a biological point of view, what's happening is that there are two hormones that play a role in how stressed we're feeling. The first is adrenaline, and you know that's a surge of adrenaline arise. We're in a situation that we're finding a bit stressful, and actually that little bit of adrenaline is really helpful because it gives you a buzz and it gives you the energy that you need to get through. The second hormone that plays a part is cortisol. Now, cortisol is always present in us. It's just that in times of stress, the levels of cortisol rise. Now, again, you can have real benefits to this. Increased levels of cortisol can actually be very helpful in terms of increasing your memory capabilities, and it can give you that energy that you need. The difficulty with stress is if we stay in a prolonged period of stress, then these heightened levels that we're experiencing with adrenaline and cortisol can have a negative impact on our well-being, our mental and our physical well-being. So waiting for something is never easy. We know something's coming up, we've got to wait for it, there's a period, there's nothing you can do at the time, it's just a matter of waiting, it's out of your control. Examples of this would include going for a job interview and waiting to find out the result. It could be that you've had some tests done with respect to health and you're waiting to find out what they say. For my little daughter, it means waiting for her birthday because it's only 3 sleeps away. She's too excited and nervous and anxious to sleep because she can't wait. So waiting is a perfectly normal thing that we experience all the time. I think it's particularly difficult for our students, for our children, when we've had exams, because a lot rides on that for them. And so that period of waiting is an extremely difficult one. So one situation that we find ourselves feeling stressed about is exams. Now we know that the build-up to exams is a very stressful period. As you're preparing, you're trying to get ready, and we know quite a lot about that part. However, for a number of us, the stress doesn't stop once the exam has finished, and that actually sometimes that period after the exam can be a little more stressful for some of us. It's this period of waiting. This period of unknown. Your exam's being done now, there's no more you can do, and you have this long period of time to wait before you find out your result. That period of waiting can be extremely stressful for some of us. What can happen in that period is that you can start to question how you did in the exam, what is your result going to be? And we start to ask ourselves a lot of what-if questions. What if I didn't do very well? What if I got that answer wrong? What if on that one I missed a whole chunk and I forgot to include it? The problem is that if we focus on those sorts of questions, we start to ruminate on them and those thoughts go over and over again, and it can really lead to this heightened period of anxiety and worry after our exams have finished. So we know that there are some negative consequences of long-term stress, all right? We do know that. But I think it's important not to overlook some of the positive aspects that come with it too. So in terms of dealing with post-exam stress, there is some work to suggest that those students who are worrying and are feeling stressed during that waiting period, they can actually cope with the news when they get the results back a little bit better. So if they get a result that they are not wanting, that they weren't hoping for, they've actually taken the time through this waiting period to consider other possibilities. What if I don't get the grades I need? What would I do next? And so there's a sort of a motivation there of planning. And so they have alternative routes and possibilities of things that they can do. And that is really beneficial. There's also some work to show that those students who worry a lot before they get the results back and get a really good one at the end, when they finally get it, they are truly happy and really celebrating and a heightened level of happiness there. So, of course, we don't want students and children to be feeling stressed. We want to do what we can to help in that situation. But if it is there potentially are some positive aspects to it. I have the pleasure of being able to teach a lot of first-year university students, and I get to see them before and after exams, and I get to see how they're coping. I know it's difficult for them. I suppose one of the key things I would tell them in terms of coping after the fact, once that exam is done, is don't look at your notes again. Don't go back and think, okay, what did I get right? What did I get wrong? What did I miss? There's work to show that worrying while you're waiting is most intense just after an exam or right before you get the feedback for your exam. And so if you go home after your exam and then start to look at your notes again and start to second guess what you've done, it's a potential there to prolong that worrying period initially. And also, you know, it's after the fact now. There isn't anything you can do. You've just got to trust in yourself. It's done, I think, and then leave it. So that would be my advice for my students. I'd also really hope that they don't just think of their experience as that exam at that moment, because really that's just an end point to a much bigger learning process. The experience of being here, us teaching them learning, them gaining knowledge, and yes, we assess it in an exam at the end. I think when you get to the end of that exam, appreciate that full learning process and experience that you've been through, because that's extremely important. So I have seen my kids go through difficult and stressful periods, and I guess there's some things that I have tried to help them. I suppose as a mum, the most important thing is that I don't want to see them having a difficult time. And so first of all, I try to be really transparent about the fact that I'm here to listen if they want to talk about things, because it can be helpful to discuss the concerns and worries you have. Although I'm also well aware that that's often not what they want to do. So I make them know that I'm there to listen if they want it, and then it's up to them if they want to engage. I try to distract them if I can come up with ways of distracting them. Think of things that they really love to do. Outings, going to the movies, going shopping, meeting up with friends. And once in a while I will try to sneak a couple of those things in, just to give them a period where they're not worrying. They are distracted enough that they can enjoy that moment then. I think that's really important. From a biological point of view, I know how important it is to be active. And when we're active, you are releasing endorphins, which can help you make you feel happy. So I think I can encourage them to get out and about once in a while, take the dog for a walk. I'm not saying they have to run a marathon, but I do, again, just subtly try to encourage some sort of activity throughout that waiting period to help improve their well-being. So I know that my students, I know that my children are going to go through potentially this period of worry after exams. I think the first important thing to remember for them is that it's normal and it is okay for them to feel that way. I hope that when they get the results back, that my students, my kids are going to cope and deal with whatever comes their way. I hope they will appreciate the process as a whole rather than, everything lying on that one grade. I think there's a lot to learn from the process. And I think when you're young and you have a plan and things don't work out as you expect, that can be really challenging for them. But I would hope that they know things don't always work out as you imagine they're going to be. And sometimes that's really good things. You can end up on a path that it perhaps wouldn't have been on otherwise. So I want to, them to know it is okay to feel worried. It is great to celebrate when things go your way. If they don't, that is okay too, and that you will bounce back and you are going to find a way that you get through it. That's, I think, what I would hope my students would feel.